Hi everyone, we're reading Del Toro Moon by Darby Karsha. Today we're reading Chapter 7. I will also be reading Chapter 8 and 9 today. By the time we reached the yard, the two-legged members of our family were relaxing in the shade on the porch, all of them with beer bottles in hand. Tilting back on his chair and with his boots propped on the railing, Dad was laughing with Kathleen. Next to her, Roman sputtered in protest. No Ben in sight, though. Maybe he didn't want to hang with the old folks. Still talking, they rose and strolled inside. Thanks for the lift. I swung my leg over Izzy's neck and sat sideways for a moment, then slid off. Any time. And I still want to have that talk. We newbies got to stick together. My heart warmed. Count on it. Elsid ambled out of the barn. Ah, you're back, Isabel. Still going by Izzy. Right. I assume you've a number of questions. If you'd like, we can chat after you've had water, or Matt can fetch you a snack. Perhaps a chilled pear? A chilled pear? I find them refreshing on hot summer days. Water's fine for now, but then, yeah, fill me in on everything I need to know. Don't talk yourself hoarse, I said. Dang, but it was funny. Get it? Don't talk to yourselves. Elsa flattened his ears. Go away. Go away before I feed you to Turk. Still grinning, I headed up the porch steps and stepped in the sorry inside. The aroma of pork and green chili, which had stewed all morning, enveloped me in a garlic-scented hug. Mouth watering and stomach growling, I hurried to the kitchen and squeezed in between Ben and Kathleen. Dad stood at the stove, landing the almost lethal stew into waiting bowls. A stack of flour tortillas, Kathleen's contribution, steamed in the middle of the table, hot and ready. And, ooh, I think they made a typo. Hot and be ready? And mishappen into imperfect rounds. Perfect. You know, Hav, I tagged along with Roman just for this. Kathleen leaned over and inhaled the rising steam. Come to mama. I took a tiny, cautious spoonful. Spicy, porky goodness filled my mouth. Maybe Dad scaled back on the peppers this time. I relaxed and took a bigger bite. Solar flares exploded in my mouth. Eyes watering, I grabbed a tortilla, slathered it with butter, then shoved in about a third. The bread eases the assault on my tongue. Kind of. Gasps of pain circled the table. Hot? My father beamed with pride. Shouldn't be the goal, Dad, Ben panted. To hurt people with your cooking? Matt? Roman dabbed his lips with a napkin, wincing no doubt from blisters. Your father told us that you went on your first hunt Saturday. Bellyacious? Sorry, I don't know. He raised his glass. I saw that he, along with Dad and Kathleen, had switched to iced tea after only one beer. Alcohol makes a young man stupid and an old man slow. Dad often said, and stupid and slow will get a hunter skinned. I clinked glasses with Roman. Thanks. I decided it wasn't worth mentioning that Elsid had bolted to safety with me. I didn't get any skinners, though, but I will next time. Nobody's getting hurt again. Not if I could help it. Javier? Kathleen fanned her mouth as she spoke. Are you sure you don't want me to check on your leg? I brought my medical bag along. No, gracias. It's healing fine. However, would you examine Elsid? I wondered if Dad asked the red-headed veterinarian to look at the stallion. Was something wrong with him? A tiny flame of worry flared up in my already superheated gut. I started to ask when Roman spoke. So, Javier, how many skinners again that attacked you? 4. 5. Everyone looked at me. There was the one who attacked first, remember? Then the 4 others showed up after that. Ah, he's right. There were 5, Dad said. The first one was a distraction to give all the others a better chance. Elsa and I thought it might be so. Even though those creatures are basically hamburgers on 4 paws, you've got to admire their cunning, Kathleen said. Have you checked on the coffer? Roman scraped his bowl with gusto. We were going to, Ben spoke around a mouthful, but Elsid went in all mama bear mode, and Turk agreed with him. They said they wouldn't take us to the cave unless Roman came along as backup, or signed a permission slip or something. Good, Kathleen laid her spoon down. They're doing their jobs then. Too bad Vasco didn't come with us. Roman passed his empty bowl to me and nodded toward the stove. Por favor. Why didn't he? I knew the enormous, dapped gray stallion loved a fight, good, bad, or ugly. After refilling the bowl, I handed it back. I asked him, but Vasco would not. I said Visco. Oh my god. I asked him, but Vasco would not step on one hoof off the ranch right now. Roman dug fearlessly into his second helping, the big show off. Not with the mares being distracted with their new foals. I told him that Joe is more than capable of running things, but you know Vasco. He is overly protective of the babies. Kathleen gulped the rest of her iced tea and pushed it from the table. Dad rose when she did. She waved him back down, then patted his shoulder. Delicious meal, Javier. Always grateful to have survived it. Well, I'm off to check on my old friend. After she left, Dad and Roman began reminiscing about a hunt they had completely and totally screwed up when they were young and stupid. I leaned closer to Ben. Hey, what's going on with El Cid? Ben shrugged. He's getting old, I guess. My heart stumbled, as if I had tripped over something in the dark. May I be excused? At Dad's distracted nod, I carried my bowl to the sink, then slipped out the front door. I started for the barn, but changed my mind and headed to the adobe ruins. Then thought of El Cid getting old. The thought of Elsa getting older was like a pimple on my chin. Knowing there was nothing I could do about it, it still picked at the notion, making it worse, drawing blood. Why did the why did it bother me so much? I sank down in the shade of the broken walls and thick mud bricks cool against my back. It wasn't like he was dying or anything, I pointed it out to myself. Heck, he wasn't even close. Leaning my head back, I stared into the everlasting blue of sky. Ever since I was a little kid, I played a game inside my head that no one else knew about. It was kind of sick, but I couldn't stop doing it. Maybe it's the way of dealing with losing Mom. I think about someone in my family dying, then I try to imagine what life would be like without them. I close my eyes and try to picture a world that didn't have a gray stallion in one corner of it. I couldn't. All my life I had dreamed of hunting with the warhorse. Me and El Cid, Team Del Toro, were going to bust up so many skinners there wouldn't be any left. And Dad and Ben would have to find new hobbies, and the maze would be open to people who wouldn't have to worry about anything more dangerous than sunburn. Matt? I startled. Kathleen walked past on her way to her truck. A bulging medical pack swung from one shoulder. She opened the cab, placed the bag on the seat, then wandered over to me. What's wrong, Betty? Nothing. How could I explain what I was trying to grief? Just to see if I could stand up under its weight. Liar. You're worrying about El Cid, aren't you? She sank down next to me. Scoot over. The Irish gal needs all the shade she can get. Shoulder to shoulder. We sat there watching a maverick cloud ambling eastward on its way to Kansas. Is there something wrong with him? I recalled how hard he was breathing when he escaped the Skinners. I picked up a pebble and squeezed it, just to have something to hang on to, just in case. Not one bit. In fact, he's in excellent condition considering he's close to 19. Not really old. This line of Andalusians is extremely long-lived compared to most breeds, but he's getting up there. I'm leaving a vitamin supplement you can mix with his grain once a day. It'll help him kick back in his kick. I've discussed this with him, and he approved. Other than that, I can see him going pretty strong for another 10 years, barring any accidents. 10 years? That was practically like a second lifetime for me. My whole body lightened. I swore I floated up, the seed of my genes leaving the dirt. Really? Have I ever been anything but totally honest with you, kiddo? A wave of relief rolled over me. I grinned. So that means I really am your favorite? She laughed. Got me there. Thwack. The front screen opened and shut. Dad and Roman, with Ben trailing, marched down the steps and across the yard in their boots and cowboy hats. They looked like old-time Western sheriffs, eager to hunt down some desperados. They only lacked 10 stars on their shirt and 6-shooters on their hips, except guns didn't work on Skinners. All three of them were packing maces. Where's my Irish rose? Roman's voice boomed around the yard. Why 'twouldn't be Irish, wild Irish rose to ye, boyo. Kathleen patted my knee and then stood and dusted off her jeans. I joined her. You three gents off to work? 3.5, Matt. Dad cocked his head towards the house. Arm yourself, my son. Anticipation and nervousness washed over me in a flood of hot and cold. Speaking of flooding, but before retrieving my mace from the hooks at the front door, I made a detour to the bathroom. Another rule of hunting: pee when you can. I passed Kathleen coming inside, and as I was heading out, are you staying here? I already knew her answer, but I asked anyway. Yeah, I'd be more hindrance than anything, especially since we're short on horses. She flopped down on the sofa, a thick paperback novel in her hand. Plus, no matter how much I practice, I'll never match your skills with a mace. I don't have the bloodline. And anyway, I started too late in my life. Another question, something I'd always wondered, showed up. After you met Roman and you learned about the whole talking horse and monster and magical weapons, did that freak you out? No, not really. I blinked. It didn't? Actually, I think it surprised Roman more that I rolled with it. She laughed at my expression. Matt, I come from Irish stock, remember? And we O'Reillys. O'Reilly. Sorry. Okay, I had to do that. Have always believed that our ancestors had their own fair share of monsters to battle, all with the help of some legendary weapons and a wee bit of Celtic magic. Believing in Roman's rather unique background wasn't much of a chasm to leap. She sank further into the cushions and opened her book. Now hustle before your father comes looking for you. Oh, and Matt? I looked back, one hand on the screen. Yeah? Tell Javier I'll stock your first aid kit. Then, that's it. She shot me a stern look. You guys be careful. Remember, I'm a vet, not a doctor. I can only use so much patching. We will. As I stepped through the door, I heard her whisper a word that makes no sense. Baga. Sorry. I jogged to the barn, boots crunching on the gravel. Halfway across the yard, I caught Izzy's voice rising in protest. Uh-oh, what's wrong now? I stepped inside the coolness and looked around. Turk and Elsa had waited in the center of the large space, while Roman and Dad groomed them with quick, efficient strokes. Off to one side, Izzy fumed while Ben's expression matched hers. But that's why I'm here, Javier. She stamped a hoof in frustration. To hunt and watch out for Ben, not to stand around in the barn making small talk with the mice while you guys are at the party. We don't have mice, Elsa murmured, eyes half closed in bliss as my father brushed his coat. Turk catches them, then eats them. Dad raised his free hand, forestalling Izzy's next words. I understand. You're eager to help, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. But this is just to check on the coffer, not a real hunt. You won't miss any excitement, and forgive me, but I want you and Ben to have a few more training sessions first. We did do some training together, remember? My brother reminded him. When I was at the Naviers, asked Roman. Ask Roman. No, no. The large hunter ran a brush down Turk's shoulder. I think we'll skip the family drama this time. Smart man. And anyway, if this is a reconciliations mission, Ben continued. Reconnaissance mission, sorry about that. Ben continued. Then it's a good way for Izzy and me to clock some more hours together, even if it's just riding. You're always saying that there's no substitute for time in the saddle. He motioned me over and slung an arm around my neck, and Matt could ride double with me to the maze. Desperate to avoid getting stuck on Turk, and equally anxious not to add more weight to Elsinid, I nodded in agreement. Please, Dad? I put on my baby of the family face. I worked about 65% of the time. Good odds. Dad paused. He rested an arm on Elsid's back and looked at Roman. The other man shrugged, then bent over and began cleaning Turk's hoofs. Your kids, your call. Elsid? Oh, let her come, Javier. Experience is the best teacher and all that. Dad pinned the three of us with his gaze. If I give you, any of you, an order and you disobey, he threw his thumb curved like a scimitar across his throat and hissed. Comprehend? Sorry, see, Papa. Ben and I answered in unison. His eyes flickered over the mare. Isabel? See, Papa. He fought back a smile. Another smart mouth. He went back to sweeping the brush along Elsid's spine from the withers to tail. Saddle up. Matt, give Roman a hand. Thanks, Ben murmured. I owe you. Big time. I walked over to the saddle rack to fetch Turk's. Sorry about all the weird reading. We could have ridden bareback and often did, but never, ever on a hunt. Elsid wouldn't let us. Any of us. Not even Dad. One of his rules. I don't care how skilled a rider you are, Elsid always said. It's easier for you humans to stay in a saddle. That's why stirrups were such an important development. First used in China, the use of the stirrup spread throughout Eurasia by the great horsemen of the Central Asian steppes. That's about the time Ben or I would interrupt before Professor Trivia launched into another history lesson. As Ben readied Izzy, I picked up Turk's saddle and pad with both arms and hauled it over to Roman. He usually rode Turk when he visited and needed another mount. The big black could more easily handle the larger man's weight. Also, Roman was probably the only other person in the world that Turk would stand, grudgingly. Gracias. Roman took the saddle by the horn with one hand, then laid a thick pat on Turk's back and slid it backwards an inch. Did you know why I did that? So that all the hairs lay flat and don't pull when the saddle shifts? That's right. He lifted the saddle onto the broad back and fastened the shink, easy easing the buckle tighter hole by hole. There, everything feels good, my friend. Shink not too tight. It'll do. Roman shook his head, then laid a massive hand on my shoulder. I forced myself to stand straight under the weight. Remember, Chico, the comfort and well-being of our war brothers and sisters come first. The fact that we ride upon them does not mean they are beneath us. No, they eat before us. They rest before us. Everything for them first. Next, your father, brother, and the innocents of this world. Lastly, yourself. I nodded, the way of the king, knight of the coffer. I repeated the familiar words. Roman gazed down at me, a smile playing around the corners of his mouth. The way of a true man, he said softly. And that is the end of chapter 7. I'll record chapter 8 really soon, so just look out for that. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions or comments, just say them in the comments. Please subscribe and like. Thank you. Bye.